Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, may I have your attention, please? Are you ready to engage in a mind-blowing experience and hear talks about life, technology, entertainment, and business? The next episode of HIPTHER Talks starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hi everyone, Zoltan here, back once again on HIPTHER Talks. Today I have with me Edwin Mata, CEO and co-founder of Brickken, and today we are once again talking about blockchain, Bitcoin, and DeFi. So, hi Edwin, it's nice to see you. I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself, say a few words about yourself and the company.
Hi, hello, Zoltan. Thank you for having me here. My name is Edwin Mata. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Brickken. My background is I'm a lawyer. And, well, I mean, you always say a lawyer, right? So I'm saying not anymore, but that's not true. And now, basically, we run a tokenization platform that we're doing to a decentralized application. We'll try to merge a little bit some of the legal aspects as we're tokenizing equity and then pushing them into chains so they can probably in the future, hopefully, start establishing connections with DeFi protocols for lending, collateralization, and whatnot, because tokenizing assets has an embedded value already in the token itself, so it could be interesting in the future for connecting different ecosystems.
All right, so that was short and precise. Thank you so much. All right, so I think we can already dive into the questions as we have plenty of them. And so blockchain, DLT, Bitcoin, DeFi, just to educate our listeners, what exactly are they and how do they fit together?
I mean, to understand everything, I mean, it's just the openness of a ledger, right? So back in the day, accounting really had books and they had all these entry fields and it was like just one book original. Then we went into digital. It was an Excel sheet. It's still accounting. So, but it's still very private, right? So now we have this thing that it's distributed. What does it mean? That it's open to everybody to analyze any kind of transaction that occurs. And that just has allowed us to create different ecosystems and any kind of blockchain. Because all information and all data becomes available to everybody who's requesting information to the blockchain. And that just becomes very interesting. And that's why there's creating new business models and new types of information. It's just because of this openness. We have never had open databases. Every company has its own private database. Every government has its own private database. And now we have this one that is just open for anybody to see and check it out. And that's, well, for me, the most interesting about it. It's the openness of the system.
All right, so that would be my side question for you about how did you get into this industry? Because as a lawyer, you must have been started out to learn about blockchain because you certainly started to learn about civil law and common law first, and then later got into blockchain. So how was it?
Yeah, so I used to work in a legal tech company a couple of years ago called Signature, which was an electronic signature and digital identity platform. So they built up an R&D department and I became part of it. And then I was starting to manage the blockchain section with actually one of my co-founders. We both met at the company. And we were trying to analyze if contracts can be executed as a smart contract would be. There's a lot of differences because obviously one is code, the other one has a lot of subjective matters. But we started analyzing that some clauses could be automized. And that's because since the openness of the layer, if there's a transaction or a conditional, like if payment happens from A and B, it executes clause B. So I thought that was very interesting for me because there's a lot of work that was like, okay, it's redundant. We don't have to do it. Like code can do it. And that was my first entry into the world. One thing, just like I was there and I was like, oh, I like this technology a lot. So I started studying more. And now I'm here as a geek.
Okay, so it's not just about being interested in it, you have to love it also. So yeah, given that you have a vast experience that you have accumulated, of course, are you persuaded by the decentralization agenda of today's proponents of Web3 and crypto?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be drastic, but I think society goes always in circles. We go from centralized to decentralized, we go again to centralized to decentralized. I mean, we went from I don't know, ethos or whatever in Greek, democracy being built. Then we had monarchies, and then we had like parliaments, and then we have blends, hybrid. So, I mean, technology is probably the same, right? So, I do see a lot of centralization factors happening in the decentralized space because of accumulation. And we've seen it even with Ethereum. With the proof of stake, they're already saying like there's a couple of nodes that are going to be very important for decision and governance. So again, it's just it's part of the process. But is it better? No. I mean, it's just what happens.
Exactly. And yeah, you told me that how you got into blockchain, but just want to ask, and are there any types of limitations that maybe shape your thinking about blockchain technology?
Yes, I don't want to go into the philosophy, but I think human beings are a limitation because we're the ones coding and we're the ones establishing how the blockchains work. So it's always a matter of personal interest. There's a lot of actually agnosticism in the sense that they look for the better being, but in the end, a lot of us, not saying me per se, but saying the ecosystem itself, there's money to be made, right? So I build a company. Yeah, I do want to tokenize equity. I want to be more efficient. I want to optimize processes for companies, but I also want to eat and I also want to travel. So it's kind of like the factor is there.
All right, got it. So yeah, I'm very curious about what led you to create a decentralized platform that benefits both investors and businesses as well.
I mean, it was a matter of opportunity. I've been always looking into the real estate for flipping. I mean, I never had the cash flow. And then when I had opportunity arise, I thought about like asking the bank for a loan, but I couldn't do it because I was a freelancer. So here in Spain, it's very limited how you get money from banks.
Yeah.
They were like, no, but you're a freelancer. But I was like, but I do have income. I'm not saying high or low. It's just like, it's a steady one, just doing performing work here and there. And they were like, no, but you're a high risk factor because tomorrow you might not have a job. And I was like, yeah, but an employee can kick out as well. So it's like, it doesn't make any sense. So I was looking into crowdfunding platforms and I was checking out all the kind of methodologies for raising funds. And obviously I came from a startup helping and then as a lawyer, the raising, the VC. So it kind of like blend everything into like a big milkshake and then hopefully it tastes like strawberry. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we have hopefully the right ingredients to make something massive. That's what I do believe.
All right, so that's a really interesting answer. So could you tell our audience, and I'm also curious about how does the platform actually work?
Yes, of course. I mean, not only we went through studying the market for crowdfunding, obviously you have to benchmark competitors or possible competitors in the future. And then we learn from all of that. We created an MVP. We don't even use that technology anymore because everything we thought how it would work the market, we were not necessarily wrong, but we would have been tested to the ground end. And then we decide to do an ICO and raise our own funds. And we didn't do it with VC the first fund. We did it with community. So we started understanding what are the pains for raising funds, what are the pains for the investors, how to merge everything. So that skin in the game allows us to create what we have now for a platform where it's like all the pains that we have, because we were looking for actively for, I want to raise ICO. I need to do this. What happens with the KYC? What happens with the funds being raised? Am I going to provide them with voting schemes? Am I going to transform myself into a DAO? How are they going to vote? Where are they going to find me? So all of those pains, we just started analyzing and we designed our platform, which is really like a problem solver in that sense, because everything that we experience afterwards is still know-how. For example, now we have problems in auditing our finance statements because all the transactions, yes, there are Ether scan when you got a cross-reference with the KYC or distributing later whatever interest or airdrops or everything. So all of that still know-how that we're embedded into the platform that we have.
All right, so it's basically you guys have put in all the experience that you gained in terms of know-how and help people with the one-stop shop, basically. With
Yes, and I mean functionality-wise, it's very simple. It's a dashboard. It's a token wizard. it's kind of like just these functionalities. Many of the things happen as if you were in the type form. So it's kind of like we really used everything that we needed and then just created this this application. And we're super excited. We're getting really good feedback because we made it from the beginning very simple, because we understand people don't like to read anymore. They're just like, my click, want to do everything. And it's like, it's not so simple, but we're allowing people to do everything with click. Don't worry about everything that is happening, and then making it attractive. So we pushed a lot in the UX sector. Actually, two of our 3 front ends in the back, they have UX experience, or I specialize in UX. So since the beginning, we were always pushing for that experience, right?
Yeah, that's fair enough. And yeah, I'm since I have you here and you have all this knowledge, I just want to maybe ask you and help our audience understand how does what does decentralization look like across the broader venture ecosystem?
Could you repeat the end part, please?
Yeah, so what does decentralization look like across a broader venture ecosystem?
This is a very good question, in the sense that I still have my centralized friends, so to speak,
Yeah.
And they really don't understand that this is an opportunity, right? They just think like this is like crazy. They're like, guys, it's not so crazy. You go every 4 years and you vote. I mean, and then it's like, or you go to the city hall, and then nobody goes to the city hall anymore. But there's usually city halls do a lot of surveys. Nobody takes them. And like, dude, we're not inventing democracy. That's always been there, but they just don't use it anymore because you stop believing in the system because it's not transparent. So what we're trying to be here is a more transparent democracy. We're not inventing anything. We're just optimizing and making something that we already use, and then just putting that layer of technology, which allows us to really believe that transparency, democracy, voting, representation, and governance, all of these things can be clean. So for me, it's very funny that one of us, for example, companies say like, oh, but once I have an open source code or I have a DApp and everybody can use it, I lose the monetization factor. And it's like, do you really do that? I mean, don't you think that, for example, Uniswap has 11 employees and is crushing your metrics on a day-to-day? Or Ethereum, how many billions are on transaction and fees, and they're crushing your every day? Just because you think on one database, you're not thinking about how you can connect to this broader ecosystem, and there's monetization factor on every instance. So it's like, the more you become open, the more opportunities arises. Not just thinking like, no, just give me your data and then I'm going to send you a pack of 10 euros every month, and then you're going to stay as a SaaS, and hopefully you forget that you paid a SaaS, and that's how I monetize more, because I'm not going to offer you the product. So it's kind of like it's a limited time. That's my opinion.
All right. So you mentioned that everybody still has their centralized friends. So maybe if you would like to help one of your friends and say the advantages of becoming more decentralized, what would you tell them? So what are the main advantages of becoming decentralized? Not the mainstream ones that are promoted by the decentralized businesses more. In your opinion, what are the advantages that are becoming more and more important to becoming decentralized?
I mean, it's been a couple of months since a couple of members here in Brickken only get paid in crypto, right?
Okay.
And it's like, why would you rather have that in Europe? I'll tell you why. Because I do sometimes have to send money across the ocean because my family is from Mexico or whatever. So if I have to do that with the bank, it's not only fees, it's time. And it's like, hey, kind of like, you need that hasteness. And it's like, in 5 minutes, I can prepare the same thing and you can have it. So I really think that it's a new form of transference. But now we're talking about cryptocurrency as a payment. But even as a data, I mean, everything that is trackable, it just becomes instant and it's out there. So it's a very efficient factor of just everything. And then obviously some will say like, oh yeah, but some blockchains are inefficient because if you use an Ethereum transaction, it can take 5 minutes. Are we really gonna go mad for 5 minutes when we're just like hours or days. It's like, are we? But that's a good thought. No, maybe you're going to be microseconds. People will say like we need nanoseconds because we just like to ask more. But I think one of the biggest factors of this decentralized world is just how everything is so fast because everything is connected. Everybody has the same information. I transfer you because I owe you 20 euros. It will go from bank to bank, and then they do all this in the back. I can sell you the DP scan transaction, and you're good to go. You're like, okay, thanks, payment. Yeah, it's in my wallet. Perfect. Good to go.
All right. Yeah. So that's fair enough, and that's some advantages that your friends should be listening to. And yeah, with like we mentioned your platform and with the with funding, investors funding. So of course, the investors have always have a risk when investing in a company. So what would be your solution to ensure that investors have a minimal risk when funding? I guess it's all about your company.
It is. So, for example, from a corporate perspective, somebody wants to issue a token, we have a KYC internally. It's no more different from when you open a bank account. You really have to know who's behind, the anti-money laundering, all this. But mostly it's a trust factor in the sense that it's easy to ask money, and then it's like, I want 1 million. It's like, why do you want 1 million? Like, you know how long it took me to raise like 10% of that amount, but you want to come here and say like, I want 100 million because I'm going to create a paradise island. And it's like, that's just ridiculous. So there's got to be a due diligence in the back always. And we get better at understanding due diligence. We go through these other platforms to do it. You open a Binance corporate account, it's ridiculous the amount of information they request. And it's super hard. But that's because Binance also says, I don't want companies to be transacting in the way that later is going to come back to me. So we still learn from that in the market on what to ask. And then from an investor point of view, KYC. We have this, we embedded this platform called SumSum, and they're the biggest provider of KYC because we need to really not put a pain in the company of who invests. So because of anti-money directives, we don't want to put them in that position. So we do facial recognition, ID, proof of domicile. And we also track wallets because since everything is trackable and everything is open, we can establish risk factor of that wallet that is being used for that purchase or whatever. So in a sense, it's what we're trying to do. It's a trust ecosystem. And lastly, going back to the corporate, okay, you can pass my KYC, but the people that have to raise funds are the ones that have to provide the most trust to the investor. So that's one factor that I've seen in the ICO, especially 2018, where there were no faces or there was no white paper. And people will invest and people learn. 2019, 2020, we got more complex. And how people were dropping white papers and people were getting ducks. And then NFT space came and we were investing on some cow called Gorilla King 27. And it was like, I don't even know who was that guy. Like, why would I invest it? But they were flipping, man. So hopefully in the next 2 years, we will see more doxing happening, which is going to be good to the space because I want to invest in experience. Like, where would I invest? In Elon Musk or Gorilla ETH 27? The answer is clear.
Yeah, exactly. And since we talked about data and lots of data, we have to talk about cybersecurity and hacks, which are inevitable. And even the largest protocols are not immune to them. So how should protocols hedge against such events in a long run?
Oof. This is one of the most complicated questions because it's an ongoing fight, right? So you got like the white hat versus the black hat, and everybody's just too good on both sides. It's like a continuous evolving in such manner. And how do you fight that? Well, you have to get audited, not only smart contract, but also implement good politics, procedures internally. If something happens, you have the procedure to shut everything down or not. But this is like an ongoing exercise all companies have to go. It goes just because you got audited once, so I mean, like, I'm clean. No, actually, you're not clean. I've seen a couple of audit certificates where they have like a red sign and they stop doing it. And it's like, yeah, you got the logo, but the big problem that you had there is still there. So it's kind of like, I want to say like we should all be responsible, get some good practices and get some people on board, a good developer, a good dev security one who can really crash it goes. This is important. We're at that level. We have to.
All right. So yeah, that's what's a hard question, and that's why I saved it for last, just before I ask you about.
Thank you, Zoltan.
That's before I ask you about the outcome of 2022 and 2023 in terms of decentralization. What is, in your opinion, the next step, and what are going to be the major developments that are coming?
I mean, I come from the tokenization world, and I see like one of the biggest developments, which is going to happen. So this is my perspective, right? Bear market hit, and obviously institutional government, they use it as an opportunity to decide, oh, crypto, we told you, like we own you and we protect you. And I mean, some really went deep into it, right? But actually, it was super good that it happened. I think rinse and repeat, right? So when you trade, you always rinse and repeat. You don't stay holding. And it was ridiculous the amount of money being flooded in projects that really didn't have anything, like we spoke. So it's important that it's going to get clean. And in meme coins where you're shooting, we have Shiba Inu, baby Shiba Inu 2, we flocking Shiba. And it was just kidding, like, guys, come on, this is just ridiculous. So it's good that the rinse and repeat happened. And then the government went to attack it, which is fine, because I do believe it's fine in the sense that one of the biggest innovations that are going to happen for me is how the economy is going to dress and change. I'm not saying it's possible. I just think it's going to be the biggest development. And it's CBDCs. So we have central banks that are telling you that they're going to tokenize money, going to leave underlying technology blockchain, and everybody's going to transact in a digitized euro, in a digitized USD, in a digitized yen. And that's just, people are waiting for mass adoption. That's the mass adoption. If anybody, that's ridiculous. Like, we really got to go into a world where we're going to be transacting fully on blockchain.
Yeah.
So is that positive or negative? I'm not saying I have a lot of resilience of central digital currency, but at least the so-called mass adoption, I think is going to be there. So the current state, bear market is opportunity. The banks didn't stop. Actually, they're pushing even more for this to occur because they're like, we kill the private sector in that sense, and then we position ourselves as the savior, saying, oh, that happens because Luna stablecoin, the USD, was not back and they don't have monetary policies. But hey, I am the bank. I've been in the game for so long. Here is my coin, and it's the only one that is going to work. And you know what? 99% of the people will fall for the trap, but 99% of the people will start transacting on blockchain. So we will stop talking about blockchain being the off sector because now the government is using it. So for me, that's a point of inflection that is going to happen in the next 5 years, which is going to be like, okay, no more blockchain conversation. Let's just get to the technology and start building.
It's really exciting.
Over.
All right. So, Edwin, thank you so much for joining us today. And to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to our channels, and we will be back next week with another guest. And Edwin, if you want to say goodbye to our listeners, you are more than welcome.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's been a great discussion. Follow us in Brickken. We're tokenizing equity, and we have some very good news coming up. And wish you all a good survival of the bear market. Good luck, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining. Be sure to check back next week for the next HIPTHER Talks and subscribe on Amazon Music, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and Pandora.